Hey guys, can you hear me? Howdy. Just a few housekeeping announcements, if you could please. Photography is allowed, just no flash. Please turn off your flash on your cameras. Cell phones, if you have cell phones, please put them on silent or vibrate. Calls can be taken out in the hallway. And the last thing is there is a microphone in the center of the room. Please use that if you have any questions. This is broadcast live, so if you're asking questions from your chair, they can't hear you. So please go to the center of the room, to the microphone, for the questions. Other than that, we should be good to go. Enjoy.
All right. Yeah, we got a couple minutes. Are y'all having a good con? That's great. Last time I asked this room that question, they were just like, ooh. But you guys were on point, so.
This group is way better than the last group. That's right.
We're going to chill for like a minute and a half and let people continue to trickle in, and then we're going to get started talking about some comic books. In the meantime, this is where you can find everybody on the panel. Josh Williamson here does not have a table, but if you see him in the con floor, just grab him and shake him as hard as you can. But everyone else, they're hanging at their table, they're selling books. Some are sketching, some will talk to you for about whatever you want to talk about. And have a good weekend.
Hey.
All right, so this is the Image Comics genre panel. We're talking about the different types of stories that we publish at Image, or rather the creators of those stories are talking about what they have created and why they work in the genre they've chosen to work in. I'm going to go down the line and just introduce the book and creator, let them talk a little bit about what the book is, and then we're going to get into some audience Q&A, so start thinking about questions. And I have a few questions for everyone on the panel, so it'll be pretty smooth and we'll have a good time. Sound good?
Woo!
First up is Kelly Sue DeConnick, writer of Pretty Deadly, which is drawn by Emma Rios, colored by Jordi Belair, lettered by Clayton Cowles. What can you tell us about this comic?
It's a weird little book. The first two issues, you will probably be completely lost. It's okay. We start to tip our hands on the third issue, on the fourth a little more, and in the fifth, I kind of feel like all the cards are on the table, but the fifth issue comes out this Wednesday, and I will find out whether I'm right or wrong about that soon thereafter. It is, when you see the art, it's insanely beautiful. This is not, unfortunately, a book that we can produce 24 pages in 30 days. So we got ahead before we solicited, and of course, by the fifth issue, we're running a little bit behind again. So we're going to be taking a break, putting out the trade, getting ahead again, and we'll repeat that process for the second arc. And then if things continue to go as well as they have gone thus far, and which I have to tell you, Emma and I literally thought like 6 people will buy this book. Like we really did not think that we would get the reception that we got on it, and 6 on the first issue became 60,000, which was a huge, literally 3 times my dream number for the book. Because of that, we're going to be able to continue into a second arc. And if things continue to go as they have gone, our ideal is that we're going to get 4 arcs out of it, so we can get the whole story out for you. And so we'll have a trade after each arc, and then some nice hardcovers planned with some bonus materials in them as well. And we're doing the $9.99 trade on this, if there are any retailers in the house.
Next up are Jason's Aaron and Latour, creators of Southern Bastards. So let's talk about that title. Why Southern Bastards?
It's pretty obvious, I think.
Yeah, it's autobiographical.
Yeah.
Well, you know, they say write what you know, right? Like that's what I know. We both grew up in the South. We both know lots of bastards who live in the South. I mean, for me, I think this is the story of what I love and hate about the place where I was born. A place I still consider myself a Southerner, even though I don't live there anymore. I think of myself as a Southern writer. There's a lot I love about the place. It's a very beautiful place, but it's also at the same time a very scarred and ugly place. So this is about all that kind of rolled into one in the form of a story about a man with a really big stick.
Yes.
All right, next up, we've got Shudder, which is written by Joe Keatinge over there, drawn by Leila Del Duca here. When does this one come out?
April 9th.
April 9th.
So
so
we're
that's
almost there.
2 weeks.
To 2 weeks. And it's been crazy because Layla and I met at a New York Comic Con 2012. And immediately after that, we were talking about working together. And then when this idea came along. And it's been this huge process since then. And now it's like a thing. It's like I've seen copies now. There's this weird these phone calls and emails and everything have like manifested into this like 20-page thing. It's pretty cool. That's Shudder.
We've got a couple of samples of Leila's art here.
I think Kit's got a future.
Yeah. Check out that perspective. Like, it looks really good. Frank, this is your 5 ghosts. I got a couple covers up, and I got some pages to show off.
Oh, that's an exciting page. And we'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
No, we actually just celebrated our first year of 5 Ghosts. We're really excited about that. We debuted the book at Emerald City last year, so it's been a very crazy year. It's the first major work I've published, along with artist Chris Mooneyham and our colorist Lauren Affey. We're so happy to be at Image. We're so happy many of you are still reading the book. We have our second collection coming out in June. It's going to have 7 issues in it. We can't do math, so when everyone's like, do 5, then trade, we missed that boat. But it's going to be a nice, thick collection. It's going to be about 200 pages. It's $14.99. Our first collection's out now, and the book, we build it as a literary pulp adventure, and I think we've stuck to that pretty well. We have a treasure hunter who's very much an Indiana Jones type character, possessed by the ghosts of 5 literary characters, who are Merlin, Merlin, Robin Hood, Sherlock Holmes, Musashi Miyamoto, and Dracula, and he can channel their powers. So if you're interested in checking it out, we have the first trade, it's $9.99, and our second one will be out soon. I have all the issues at my table, and Lauren Affey, the colorist, is with us, and that's one of my favorite pages with the giant crab that just came out. So
Is Mooneyham here?
Chris is not. Chris is at home working.
Well, that's a bummer.
Yeah, his art style it's like a European adventure comic.
Yeah.
It's wild.
Yeah, and he's just like, as a dude, he is hilarious.
We got to celebrate the launch of Pretty Deadly with Kelly Sue and Emma, and it was
That was a good time. That
was
a lot of fun.
damn good time. I got to
Yeah.
drive you guys around, and
Yeah.
you didn't question anything when you entered my car. You're just like, well,
Yeah.
he's gonna drive, and I'm gonna accept that. So thank
Yeah, I
you.
live with Matt Fraction. I just like, yeah, whatever. I figure it's going to be what it's going to be.
No, but we're happy to be here, and again, thank you everyone who's reading the book. We will keep doing it as long as we humanly can. So.
Cool. Last but not least is Josh Williamson, writer of Ghosted. How would you explain Ghosted to an audience full of strangers?
It's Ocean's 11 in a haunted house instead of a casino. It opens up with Jackson Winters as this man who's kind of on this, he basically is waiting for death at this point in prison, and he gets broken out of prison and by this rich old collector who believes there's just one thing missing from his collection, and that is a real ghost. And so he hires Jackson to break into this famous haunted house to try to steal a ghost from it. The second arc, Jackson survived the haunted house mission and now has a new mission of this cult called the Cult of the Closed Book. They kidnapped possessed people, and Jackson is assigned with trying to find one of the possessed people and bring them back. And we're in the middle of that arc right now. One of my favorite characters was a character named Anderson who died in the first issue or the 5th issue, and I liked her so much that I brought her back as a ghost because I thought it actually made sense. So that's her on the left up there. And
4
she's-
more and you'll get there.
Yeah. So I. Well, anyway, yeah.
Nicely done.
Totally screwed me up.
I'll wait now.
So, yeah, you like totally threw my concentration.
And right before this
So-
panel, Latour actually punched him in the throat.
Yeah.
Which is why
This has been my entire day. Yeah, so what we're doing with Anderson, we brought her back, and her whole thing is that she hates Jackson and she blames him for her death. And so she will not, she keeps protecting Jackson because she wants to make sure when Jackson finally does die that it's glorious, that is a horrible, brutal, like the worst death a person could have. And until she thinks that that's how he's going to die, she will continue to save him. So every time you think that he thinks he's about to die, she's like, nope, I'm going to save you because that's not a good enough death for you. I don't feel like it's bad enough. So that's where we're at right now in the book. And then Mateo Scalera is doing the covers for 6 through 10, and now Dan Panosian's coming on to do covers with issue 11.
And that's
Oh, wow.
news, right? Like no one knows that yet.
We just because I just saw the cover.
That's a nice.
You got
Yeah.
to see the cover. It's awesome. But he's taking over to do covers, and Goran, who did the first 5 issues, is coming back to do issue 11.
This is Goran's art here from
Yeah.
5th issue, I think.
Yeah, it's from the 5th issue. That's when they were all in the haunted house and shit was going down, and the ghosts were coming after him.
Yeah, it kind of starts with things going wrong and then just getting wronger and wronger.
Yeah, that's what we talk about with Jackson. Like, there's a scene in issue 10, and I think you and I were talking about it earlier today, that there's a moment where Jackson actually smiles in the middle of issue 10, and then after that, it just gets worse and worse for him. Like, the moment you turn that page, it just gets horrible for him for a few issues.
No, I got one more thing to show. Do you guys want to see something gross? All right.
Oh, nail biter.
What is Nailbiter?
Nailbiter, we announced this at Image Expo. Nailbiter, I always tell this story. What happened was when I was an art director, Joe's over there like, I hate this cover so much.
It works.
Yeah,
It does
it
the job very
worked,
well.
Many years ago, I was art director. This woman that I worked with, she came into work one day and she was telling me about how she had broke up with her boyfriend. And I remember thinking they were like a happy couple, so I was very curious what happened. And she said, "Oh, I found out that his uncle was a serial killer, and he'd murdered 5 women." And I was like, "Well, you start talking about him. Like, well, did he know? Was he involved somehow?" She's like, "No, but I just can't be in a relationship with somebody who is so close to something so evil." And it always stuck with me, this idea. We talk a lot about the victims, but we never talk about the families of the killers and how they're also the victims. I mean, what would you do if you found out someone you knew was a serial killer? You would have to start questioning, did I know somehow? Did I somehow influence her? Could I have stopped it? Like with Jeffrey Dahmer, his parents, they always go back and forth on who blames who. Like his friends from high school, they sometimes think about, we saw the signs, and that's always stuck with me. So I created this book called Nailbiter, which features that guy right there. Is Charles Edward Warren, who is, he kidnaps people who chew their nails, and then he chews their nails for them, and then he kills them. And the book takes place in a town called Buckaroo.
So it's family entertainment.
Yeah. So the book takes place in a town called Buckaroo, Oregon, where 16 of the worst serial killers were all born and raised. And this FBI agent wants to go there. He caught Warren, the nail biter, and then started realizing, over the last 40 years, these 16 horrible serial killers all happen to grow up in the same town. And he wants to know why. And he goes there, and he gets there, and something really bad happens to him in issue 1. So it's being drawn by Mike Henderson, who was the artist that I worked on with Masks and Mobsters.
All right, so that's everything, well, not everything everyone up here is working on, but it's what we're going to talk about today. If you have questions, you can start lining up at the mic, and we'll just go back and forth. But start thinking. I really want to do a Q&A. It's really good to hear from you guys.
Yeah.
But I want to segue from kind of this grossness to
I'm sorry, I can't.
no, in a perfectly positive way towards Southern Bastards.
Spiritual sequel to Dear Dracula, right, Chuck?
Yeah, it is. Oh my god, man! I have a funny story about that cover. I can tell another time.
Aaron or Latour, how dark is this story going to get?
I don't know, how dark does crime get? I mean,
Pretty dark.
yeah. I don't know that there's really a limit to that. I don't know. I don't want to put words in Jason's mouth, but
Go ahead.
I think, I don't know if you're familiar with his work on Scalped. There's always an underlying sense of humor.
There we go.
Scalped was a really dark book, obviously. And while it was funny at times, I think,
Was it? There's something wrong with you if you were laughing at that.
I think one of the things that's appealing to this about the subject matter to me, other than the personal relationship, is in growing up and coping with like some of the things that have made me angry and conflicted about like the South, like one of the things that I find interesting about it is that oftentimes the people that I find the scariest are also the funniest. So I think there's a certain absurdity to a lot of violence inherently, but also when you filter it through like broken people, you know, there's something funny about that, and I think that will balance like however dark it may get.
Yeah.
Would you
Yeah, it
agree with
is.
that?
It's definitely funnier than Scalped. I'll say
You could use that as a pull quote.
funnier than Scalped.
Funny.
Yeah, I think we talk about it's more Coen Brothers-y.
Yeah.
Like we want it to be more like our favorite Coen Brothers movies. So yeah, there's a lot of dark humor. Like the first fight scene, the first action scene in the first issue takes place in the kitchen of a barbecue joint. So yeah, it's dark and it's gritty and it's mean and it's ugly, but there are also people for you to laugh at, I guess.
Or, yeah, I would agree with that.
You got a question?
Yeah, this is gonna be a super silly question, but Joshua, does the nail biter also look for people who bite their toenails?
No, he doesn't.
No, so it's
Not-
just hand nail. Like
Second arc,
right?
That was one of the things when we were working on the book, like Mike and I sat down and we were trying to come up with the MOs for 16 serial killers and we wanted them to be all unique. Like 8 deep, we're like, oh man, we were screwed. Like we can't come up with 16. But we have a couple spots left open. I'm totally gonna.
you
put
should
that in
call
there.
Chris Sabella.
We've had some talks about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, we got the map that we're gonna do, but no, it's only the fingers. I'm a lifelong nail biter, so that's where that started for me.
Autobiographical.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
kind of, sorta. Yeah.
And
This
I
is being
immediately
strange.
wondered if he like looks at women who have like acrylics on or something, like wondering if maybe there's bit of nails underneath those.
Oh man, there's an issue 3. I'm kind of ruining this, I guess, but issue 3. There's a young woman in town who's very curious about serial killers, and she's talking to him, and he's like, "You think you're the first person to come and ask these questions?" And she's like, "But yeah, I can give you something." And he says, "What?" And she shows him her hand, and that's where we cut away from that. But yeah.
Oh man, that's awesome. I'm looking forward to reading that.
Oh, thank you.
Go for it.
So this question is also for Josh. What was the research process like when trying to come up with all of the different serial killers?
Really depressing. Like, dude, I read a lot of stuff about serial killers, and it really bummed me out. But at the same time, it was like, yeah, man. And I would read, I have an encyclopedia that's like A through Z of like pretty much all the serial killers, and not just serial killers, but like genocide stuff too. And it was like, fuck, it was horrible.
Did you ever watch that? Oh God, that A&E show where they like assigned a numerical system to evil?
Yeah.
What was the name of
I've
that
watched
show?
a lot. I can't remember this.
It was like, so how evil are you?
Yeah.
Well, this guy's a 10,
It's
and
on-
here's why.
it's on Netflix
seriously,
now.
like,
Show?
no, it was
BuzzFeed.
A lot of them. But it helped us out a lot though. Like Mike and I were able to come up with our own personal code because there were certain things we didn't want to do. We just made decisions of like, because it's really actual serial killer stuff is very ugly and it's actually much more mundane. It's not Batman's Rogue Gallery. It's much more sad and just ugly. And so we really sat down and were like, there were certain things we were not going to touch, even though that was like, 99% of serial killers is always about the same 2 things. And we were going to avoid those because we just didn't want to touch it. So that was one thing. Once we figured that out, then figuring out the rest was a little bit better. But it was definitely for a long time, like Mike and I, the artists, were talking. We were just like getting sad about stuff, because it really is kind of horrible what's out there.
really?
I know, right? Well, it's weird when you start reading this stuff. And one thing that scared me was I thought that the idea of 16 serial killers being from the same town seemed impossible. And then to find out that it actually was not impossible. It's happened twice. There's 2 different cities that have had like a lot of
Is one
serial
of them
killers.
Chicago?
No. One was in South Africa and the one was somewhere in Eastern Europe. And I remember the one in Eastern Europe was really funny because they were interviewing the cop about why were so many serial killers operating in this city. And he's like, well, every city has this many serial killers. We're just the best at catching them.
An optimist.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But no problem.
That's sort of like Dexter. Like Dexter takes place in a Miami where there are like 19 serial killers or
Yeah.
whatever it is. Like, dude, I would move. I'd just be like, no, I'm moving.
Well, I grew up in Riverside, California, which is a horrible place. And
Also full of serial killers?
also full of serial killers. I found out, this is kind of how this started actually. I found out that the Zodiac was living, they believed at one point the Zodiac lived in Riverside in the 80s. And I remember thinking, like, I knew there was like two different serial killers also operating from Riverside in the 80s. And I was like, that's so crazy. I think in my little town, at the same
Yeah.
time, there were 3 serial killers there.
This is a side conversation, but so like after, ask me about the block we lived on in Casey.
You know who we should talk to? Is Casey right here.
Oh yeah?
Yeah,
All right.
after this, we'll talk to her. I
right.
don't want to say out loud. Yeah, there's can I say what it is? I don't want to embarrass you. So the serial killer can I say this is cool? The serial killer that the girl I worked with, Casey lived next door to him.
Jeez.
And we didn't find this out until we were at Image Expo, and I announced it, and she was like, I think I know what he's talking about.
Wow.
And so after we started talking, it was the same serial killer.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
So she knows exactly what I'm talking about, that idea. And you even said, like, you were like, that guy is weird and horrible. And then you hear this and you're like, it all makes sense, it was a horrible thing. Anyway.
Yeah.
Actually, I want to stay on research for a second. Frank and Kelly Sue, both of you are doing period pieces. How much research are you doing into getting the tone or the feel right, or are you just winging it and going for whatever
Yeah,
works best?
none at all. You laugh, but I mean that absolutely and completely sincerely. And in fact, I got in a fight with my editor early on because she was like, "Well, I'm making fun of her. She's phenomenal. I love her to death. I chose her, but she was." I don't know, being editorial. And she was like, well, you need to tell me, I almost did like a voice, you need to tell me what year this is set in. And I was like, no. And she was like, no, because we need to, and I was like, it is not a history. There's a talking bunny, okay? It is not a history. This is the myth of lemon. This isn't an actual lemon. This is, there is nothing. I don't want people coming up to me and telling me that, like, well, the real gunslingers wouldn't have been, like, I don't care. This is not about, like, you know what also didn't happen? A dude with a giant skull for a head, all right? So, yeah, it is, I have only done the research that is rewatching beloved Western films, which are also highly inaccurate.
We're in the same boat, and we really kind of just screwed ourselves by having pirates and Nazis appear in the same timeline. And that was like, but you clearly the 1800s pirates, and we say we're in amorphous 30s. We never put a time period.
They're okay with the ghosts and the powers,
Like, there's
but
a dude riding a dragon. Like, let's giant crab. That's case in point. But
yes,
but no, we
giant crab, your argument is invalid.
But no, we really just try to capture a lot of the aesthetic, a lot of the spirit. And we have literary characters, but our literary characters are archetypal. They're not the actual characters, because I didn't want, on top of that, people being like, well, Sherlock Holmes would never do that, asshole. Like, I get it. But again, we just really took everything we love and put it together. And in the same way, we didn't want to put a date on it, because it's not a history. It's the same way. We wanted to catch the spirit of the things we love. And yeah, we're going to do crazy stuff. Like, there are Nazis, there are pirates, maybe robots. There's not robots, but
Now you have to.
There's not
Spoilers
robots
for the next
yet.
year.
Right. There's
I
not
know.
robots
Well,
yet.
if the book goes on until like 2090, we'll have to.
Hellboy had Nazi robots. Like, you could totally get away with it. Like, there's precedent now, so.
I like that Hellboy's also become like a genre. So.
Yeah. You got a question?
Hi, this is a question for Kelly Sue. You talk so much when you're talking about Captain Marvel and superhero stories about how much inspiration you take from mythology, from opera, from these very big, grand, over-the-top stories. And when I read Pretty Deadly, like, it feels like a myth to me. It feels like reading the Oresteia or
I love you.
there's something else. But like very specific, like very powerful myths. And I'm wondering if when coming up with Pretty Deadly, you're taking sort of the same sort of inspiration, or if it's something slightly different, two halves of the same coin, or...
We started out with Pretty Deadly wanting to do a very straightforward Sergio Leone homage. That was the plan. And then the talking bunny. The talking bunny made of bones. And I can't tell you where that came from. I literally have no idea where that came from. But the bunny and the butterfly just sort of walked onto panel and started talking, and then and I do know how crazy that sounds and how pretentious, and I apologize, but it's a fact. This sort of came into my head, and I couldn't make it go away, and then I tried to force the story to go more straightforward, and it just died. It was just dead on the page. And then so when we sort of finally decided, and you know, Emma's so great. You know, and Emma's like, you know, let the magic happen, you know, and so, you know, we let the monsters come in because we had to, because the story just wouldn't go anywhere without them. And then Charlie Houston found for me, because there was a part of me that was like bummed. I was like, but I wanted to do my Leone thing. And Charlie Houston found this quote for me where Leone says, the myth is everything. And it kind of, and I got goosebumps because I ended up feeling like we came around the other side to doing a Leone story anyway, without my understanding that was what we were doing. And I think that there is very definitely a Grimm's fairy tales kind of influence to it. But yeah, it's a. I have always flinched at fantasy. I have always been like, that is my nerd line in the sand. Like, you know, like no, you know, like spaceships, robots. All right, no elves. But
Tokyo fans just running.
yeah, I know. But this is like the universe punishing me for that or something. They're like, oh yeah. So it became this sort of epic mythological thing, really, despite my every effort. Although now I'm like, all right, whatever.
So one thing I like about this panel is it goes bastards, death dealers, ghosts, and then Joe and Leila, you guys almost have like, it's a sci-fi story that stars someone who's kind of tired of all the sci-fi aspects.
Yeah.
If that makes sense?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, I think
I would say it's more fantasy than
Yeah.
sci-fi.
Yeah.
I mean, there's kind of when I initially came up with this idea years and years and years ago, it was actually kind of simple. I went through a similar thing where it was like I wanted to do Tintin, or I wanted to do Corto Maltese. I wanted to do like my world, you know, traveling adventurer, and there's no robots, there's no rocket ships, and I mean, spoilers, there's a rocket ship in it now. And what that came out of was meeting Leila at New York and seeing her artwork, and I'm just like, holy crap, you can just draw anything. And I remember, correct me if I'm wrong, but I asked you for a list of stuff you wanted to draw, and your answer was everything, right?
Yeah, except for superheroes and zombies, I think.
Yeah. So it kind of became like, well, let's screw it. Like we'll just like the core of this book is this this is a woman named Kate who's the last in the line. This family of world-faring adventurers and explorers, and 10 years ago she left it. She was like, I don't want to do this anymore. And something happens with the family secret that gets out that kind of draws her back. And that's the core of it, is like what her journey is, both personally and you know, and actually. But like, there's all sorts of random crap in here. Like, that's because it's fun to see what you do with it, you know.
Thank you. Well, yeah, people might think it's sci-fi from the first few pages because it takes place on the moon in a flashback, but then it quickly goes to this really fantastical version of Earth where like mythological beings and fantasy creatures have kind of always existed, and it's not that big of a deal to anyone because it's always been that way. But yeah, so it's like set in this fantastic realm, but it's really just about family and who you make into your family, and then how you deal with your blood relations if you don't like them and stuff.
But there's like, in the second issue, there's a gang of tight lions in pinstripe suits who have a flying car and a giant. And
Did you say tight lions?
Sold.
tight lions.
Tight lions.
So I mean, it's kind of whatever. Again, we all kind of work it in there. That's what I love about comics, that you can do anything. You know, there's no, especially at Image, there's no one being like, oh, well, you can't have a rocket ship in a fantasy book, because it's like, you know, who cares? Like, it's just like, you know, it'll make it look awesome. And, so.
Yeah, Joe, I got to read Shed #1, I think around Christmas time, I think. And I just, on my iPad, sat down and read it, and I was like, this is easily Joe's best work.
Oh, thanks, man.
Like, it's a lot of fun, it's good, the characters, like, you know, I think there's a couple books, like Sex Criminals is a book I love because I feel like I know those people, like, I've known them in my life, I went to school with them, like, you know, like, you feel it. And I felt the same way with Shudder when I was reading it, like, I was just like, I know this girl. You know, I can hear her voice, I can hear her talking to her friend about what, you know, they were doing. I really saw it, and I got that the art was beautiful. Like, I was just really, like, happy with it, and I, like, told Joe this, like, I think it was via text, I think. I was just like, I think you were having a hard day or something. Yeah. And I was just like, this is a beautiful comic book, man. This is so good. 'Cause it's really a great comic.
Thank you.
Well, yeah, this is my favorite thing about Leila's art is we'll have this crazy, absurd, over-the-top, tight-line situation, but you're drawn to Kate and her emotion and what she's going through, and I think it's such a hard thing to do. You know, like the little subtle acting. I guess I don't know if that's what you would call it. But
you.
yeah, you make that work. This is amazing. So good job.
Thank you. I also want to say that Owen Gianni colors it.
Oh yeah.
And he adds he makes it. I don't even know what to say. Like, he's so fucking amazing at coloring, and he colors my work in like 3 different styles in the first issue, and I think they're all amazing. And it wouldn't the comic wouldn't look nearly as awesome without Owen and what he adds to the book.
You got a question?
Yeah, this is for the Jasons. When you're creating a story that you know, how do you identify what you need to research?
I don't know that I researched anything for this book. I researched it for
I've spent my whole
for
life
30
reading.
years. Yeah, when I lived in Alabama, and I watched lots of the Dukes of Hazzard and lots of Coen Brothers movies and read lots of crime, lots of James Ellroy books. Yeah, I mean, this is the one book I didn't have to worry about research really. Yeah, I mean, there's so much of it that's what I grew up around. Not that I grew up around people getting shot constantly, but in terms of the characters that you meet in this book, you know, I think probably both of us know a lot of these people.
Yeah, you spend
or are these people.
Yeah, you spend pretty much, 36 years of your life tearing your own head apart, trying to get to understand why you are the way you are. So it kind of prepares you for something that's like this,
Sounds like you had a fun childhood.
I did.
The first time I met Latour, there was a project you were working on, and I honestly don't remember what it was now, but I remember like we were asking you like, what's it about? And there's this like long ass silence. He goes, "I'm gonna drop an awesome bomb on your ass." And my accent is not as good as his, but
That
but
was
like,
incredible.
yeah.
But I think even like having the football coach, like the football culture setting feels so. I grew up in Georgia, and my high school actually just lost its state, and that feels very true.
Yeah, I played football in high school, of all things. I'm probably the only artist I've ever met that did that. I wasn't very good, but I was on the team, and it's a pretty ridiculous culture that I love and also hate. So it's kind of I've never seen. It's not like it is a huge element in the book. It's not a thing that's on page a whole lot in first series.
Yeah, I mean, you certainly don't need to be a football fan
Yeah.
or know shit about football to read
It's
the book.
basically one of the conceits of the book is that, like, if you hate tough guy comics, you might like this comic. If you love them, you'll like this comic. If you hate football, you might love this comic. If you love football, you probably love this comic. I think it's the dichotomy of the thing that interests me anyway, because I don't know that there's an answer that's more interesting than the question.
That's a good note.
I'm like Russ Cole all of a sudden. It's like
Can
time
you
is
cut
a-
this water bottle apart and make a little man out of it?
Southern Bastard is a flat circle.
It's been a long weekend, man.
Go for it.
So I'm from the South myself, and I'm wondering, Jason, if it took me moving away, actually, and living out here for about 8 years to kind of appreciate some of the more beautiful things about where I'm from. And
Yeah.
I understand what you're both saying about, what's ugly about it, but
If I sound confused, it's because I am.
It's okay. No.
Yeah.
Me too. And the thing is, I'm just curious if you also saw the beauty about it after leaving, or if you left.
Well,
to see
I
it.
moved back. He's not there anymore. See, he's pretty weak.
I couldn't hack it. No, I think for me, yeah, I moved out of the South. I moved to Kansas, to the Midwest, like 14 years ago. So I still have family in Alabama. I still go back there a lot, still visit. So I think going back does remind me of these are the things that I really like about this place. But it's a stark reminder of, these are the things I really don't like about this place.
Yeah,
So-
I did a really dumb thing in that when I first decided that I was ready to kind of run away, I went deeper into the South. So I grew up in North Carolina, so then I lived in Atlanta for a while, in Florida, and then it took me moving to New York City to really miss it. Even though I loved New York, there was part of me that felt like I needed to at least go home and stare it in the face for real, like as an adult. And I'm glad that happened, because now I'm able to laugh about things a little bit and actually appreciate things that as a kid I maybe have looked past, you know. So for me in particular, like, there's a lot of anger in the book maybe, but there's also a lot of love.
Next question, Hawkeye.
So from what I'm hearing is Joshua is the only one who's researched anything, and it totally
Yeah, he's a sucker.
It totally bummed him out.
Yeah, notice how sad he is. Yeah.
I think there's a lesson here.
I guess my question is maybe on other projects, if you've been researching something and had a good experience with it and discovered something that helped, or if I don't know, Frank, if you've been researching anything, because I don't think you've talked about that much.
I used to be a high school English teacher, and I loved literary canon, I love stories, and all of that kind of comes through me, I think, in this. And Five Ghosts comes from a really just fun, organic spot for everyone on the team, and it's really our love letter to everything we love in comics, and that's why we're not worried about fact. It's how we process everything, and I think that's really what research is for. I mean, I'm doing a book on Dark Horse called The White Suits that deals with a lot of Cold War stuff, and the fun part on research, and I'm sure everybody here knows, and Josh, even with Nailbiter, is when you start doing research and you're writing a story, it weirdly starts creeping in. And with that project, it's a crime story and takes place during the Cold War, and we started finding all these weird links that almost felt like we placed them, and that's the cool thing about research. It can be exciting, you can learn a lot, and you can also get caught in a hole. I hear a lot of writers say, like, sometimes if they get very heavy into research, they'll just, again, especially with technology and the internet, they'll just go off and get stuck in research and not do their writing. But it's a yin and yang. You get a lot from it, but you have to be purposeful, I feel like. And with things like this, it's just there's so much, and it comes from such a personal space. It's how we've processed so much. But when I have done research, like I said, it's about finding the purposeful research. It can really give and take. It can be inspiring. It can be educating. And I know, I'm sure, well, Josh can probably speak about it too.
I'm trying to think of something that was a positive research experience. Well, Captain Midnight was fun. I had researched all kinds of old Captain Midnight stuff. That was easy. But with Nailbiter, it was tough because of the research. I didn't want to get too much into it. And then I started realizing at one point while I was working on it that one of the main things I wanted to research, it wasn't just serial killers, different types of serial killers. I was trying to research the research that actual doctors have done into what causes serial killers. And I started realizing at one point I was getting so lost in the research that I was no longer trying to write a comic. I was trying to solve what makes serial killers. And like, that's impossible, you know, like no one could ever, you know, figure that out. And that was a moment where I was like, I had to take a step back because I was getting too much into that, which is like, could never answer in a comic book.
Who would watch a TV show about a comics creator trying to solve serial killers? I feel like that's an amazing hook.
I'm pretty sure that's Castle, just, you know, like.
My next book is called Bitch Planet, so my entire life has been research.
My next comic is called
before
Tight
Image
Lines.
Expo, right before Image Expo, I went to the FTP site to upload Nailbiter stuff, and I saw the titles. And I saw Bitch Planet, and I was like, who thinks they're going to get away with that?
It was all caps, right? I remember.
Right? Yeah. Yeah. And I remember sitting in the back. I'm in the back, and I'm watching the thing, and then Kelly goes up there, and it's all Bitch Planet. I was stopped.
Yeah, and the bummer too is like in the first sketch that Val did of the cover, like he did the sketch and it's like this, you know, like and then and like the finish art comes in and he's angled the hand a little bit and it's beautiful, but it's like it's not quite as I was like no, not subtle, not subtle.
Side finger.
Yeah.
But yeah, I
Side
guess,
boob. Just go for it, you know?
I guess we published Sex Criminals, Southern Bastards, Bitch Planet. Like, it's all downhill from here. It's going to get more and more filthy.
My next book, Motherfuckers.
Yeah.
Motherfuckers, fuck you.
Can we do some kind of like line-wide Crisis on Infinite Earths where the bastards and the bitches and the sex criminals
The
all
age of
slam together?
apocalypse.
Next question.
So the Image
Are there
Comics.
children in the room?
The Image
Not
Comics
anymore,
shared
there
sex
aren't.
universe.
Yeah.
Hi.
Everybody's
So, question for the writers. Sort of when you're totally forgetting my question after all the.
I'm sorry. It was all the fucks, wasn't
Yeah,
it?
what are we talking about? So how do you approach writing for comics and like the graphic novel comics medium versus like when you want to tell your story versus writing for like film or text? Like why did you choose comics and sort of what draws you to writing for comics versus another medium to tell your story?
You guys want to go?
Go down the line, pretty much.
I just see comics in my head. Like I've tried writing other stuff, and it's just how it is. You know, like my brain doesn't work the other ways. I've tried, but really for me, I don't see things in sequence. I see the pages. You know, and that's what it is. So I've tried writing other stuff, and it just doesn't. It's not just not a struggle. It's just not what I want to do. So that's why I just do comics, and because I see the pages. You know.
I love collaboration. I'm a twin. I grew up playing music in bands, and I love taking an idea and growing it with other people. And prose is so insular and just you're by yourself. And comics more so than film, because film will go out to a whole lot of people. Comics is just our team at any given time. And I love, as a writer, you write something and put it to your artist. And especially with creator-owned work where you choose your artist and it's someone you trust and you probably love their work, it's the most fun thing in the world to get the pages back and come back to you, and you're outside it again. And it just, again, it's an addicting process, and it's the best, just the collaboration. And every change is always something new and something fun. So,
I didn't know you were a twin.
Yeah, I was thinking the same
I'm
thing.
really fascinated by that for some reason.
If only
Is that
my-
really boring? I'm sorry.
no, I just wish my brother was like an artist or something cool. But he was a musician, so that was like he would get the second introduction at
Does
like.
he ever just come do panels for you?
Maybe he is right now.
That's
Have these
awesome.
signings for you. It'd be awesome.
Yeah, I do all kinds of writing. I write other stuff too. It's just that, you know, it's different sets of muscles. You always want to be working on the other thing, by the way. Like you always, like whatever it is that is due next is the last thing in the world you want to work on. Yeah, I think like I like vanilla and chocolate, you know.
Yeah. I mean, I'm kind of with you on that. Like, a little bit of everything so far. I've written other stuff. I've done a couple video game things, but just my whole life has been wanting to do comics, despite having interest in other, you know, novels or movies or whatever. But,
Yeah, I have a theater degree.
Yeah.
Theater degrees! Make some noise.
But I don't know, man. It always comes back to just the biggest charge I get is comics, and I think a lot of it is, you know, when I you know, like for instance, Shudder is a perfect example, because the original idea and what it ended becoming with Leila and Owen, you know, together was like something I never could have imagined. Like, to plug someone else's book, if someone's not read comics, wants to read comics, the #1 book I recommend is called I Killed Giants. I don't know if you read it. Joe Kelly and James Kendamura, because it's an embodiment of everything why I love this medium so much. It's something that these are two guys from completely opposite ends of the world doing a comic that just wouldn't exist without them. And it's a personal story, but it's dressed in this huge kind of fantasy backdrop that you couldn't really do, you know, in a movie. And the thing is, like, right now, how much does a movie cost to make? Like, it gets decent distribution, $60 million
Yeah,
at least.
every once in a while we get some kind of Hollywood interest in Pretty Deadly or whatever, and they're like
Good
yeah,
luck.
do the math on that budget. Do the math on that budget.
Yeah,
you know, like that ain't gonna happen.
Well,
but there's no limit in comic books. Like, you know, what do you want to do? Can you draw it?
Yeah.
Sold.
Yeah,
you know?
that's why Layla's the perfect partner. It's just like
Yeah.
she can draw anything, and there's no one at Image telling us like, oh, you know, you shouldn't. Again, they're publishing a book called Bitch Planet. They're not telling us what to do or not to do. They're letting us do kind of whatever, and that's what's
And the pitch process for that, by the way, was
the title.
Yeah, it was, no, like literally, it was. It was. Eric was like, "So what's next?" And I was like, "Well, you know, I have this thing that I want to do. That's like you know, it's a kind of a feminist take on exploitation films." And I think, I mean, just a working title, but I was thinking of maybe calling it Bitch Planet. And I get this email back that was like, "I would very much like to publish something." True story.
That's it, right?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I've read comics since I was a kid. That's pretty much all I ever wanted to do. You know, I've never written a screenplay. Maybe someday that would be cool. Everybody dreams of those giant piles of money that they have in Hollywood. But yeah, like they're saying, I mean, any of the books, you know, any of us are doing an Image. You could take everybody involved with that book and put them, you know, fit them on this panel right here. And those are the only people you have to deal with in order to bring this thing to life. You know, you talk to one or two people at Image, then you have the couple of people who actually put the book together, and then, you know, it goes directly to you guys at a shop. That's awesome, as opposed to, you know, I know people who work in Hollywood and they spend their whole lives working and writing things and dealing with hundreds of different people. The more money is involved, the more people who have a say in things, more fingers in the pie, and maybe they have something produced at some point. This is a way better way to tell stories, in my opinion. So I'm happy just doing this.
And also, like, even though our book seems like it's a realistic thing, like, as far as my approach to it, like, it is comics. Like, I'm not trying to make a TV show on paper.
Right. Yeah.
You know, and I think I'm very confident that when you read it, it will feel like comics, like a thing that, you know, maybe it would exist all right in another medium, but it's not going to be the same experience.
Yeah, that would be a different thing. Yeah.
Yeah. We got about 5 minutes left, so we have time for one more question, I think.
Oh, we can do two. Come on.
Yeah, we can try to squeeze it in.
Do it. And one of the aspects that kind of caught my attention was that creepy little nursery rhyme type thing that you got going through it. And I kind of wondered what gave you the idea to include that element.
I don't know. I mean, I sort of liked the idea of there being a ballad for her. And it was supposed to be the first thing that I wrote. And then, like, I wanted to start it with an invocation to the muse. And so I was trying to invoke Calliope. And then, like, I got in an argument with my editor, who is an amazing person, even though I keep talking about it like she's not. But, you know, there's a slightly antagonistic relationship that's set up there. So and she was like, "Why Calliope?" And I'm like, "Epic poetry." She's like, "But this is not epic poetry." I'm like, So anyway, I got like weirdly stifled by that, and so I ended up the song was the very last thing that was written. It was literally written and lettered the night before the book went to press, and so because of that, there are a couple of lines in it that the meter is off. And I kept telling myself, I'm just going to fix it before it goes to trade. I'm going to fix it before it goes to trade. And then once it was done, I never did. So it just stayed that way. But there is another, the Shield Maids also have a verse. And the Shield Maids verse that's in issue 5, the meter's right on that. So I win.
Quick question. My son and my daughter are trying to write a comic book together, and I just thought maybe you guys could talk a little bit more. This is the first panel I've seen with artists and the writers together. Talk a little bit about your communication, your relationships together, building a comic book.
They'll want to get a contract.
That's it.
No, that's not true.
That's awesome. There's nothing I would enjoy more. When I was in bands, I was with my brother, and working with family is so rewarding and so great. And honestly, just be true to what they want to do. And comics is a testament that the audience is there, and there are events like this, and there's community, and I got into comics just by coming to shows and bringing my work and setting up, and the number one thing I say is just do it.
Yeah.
And that's how everyone here got here. You just got to make what you love. And
Yeah, every working relationship is different. Like every single artist-writer pairing is different. And like Emma and I have an agreement that I have the last word on words and she has the last word on pictures. So if there's anything that we ever disagree about, then we just defer to that process, and that helps a lot. We very seldom actually disagree, which is kind of amazing, and I'm sort of like not sure how that happened, but yeah, I mean, my son is only 6, but he draws compulsively, and I just keep like being like, oh, I can't wait, you know, it's coming. I realize my dream of how, you know. No, draw.
no football team. You're going to draw a new book.
All right, I think that's a good note to end on, honestly.
Yeah, me whipping my kid. All right. Thank you.
Thank you guys for coming out. Thanks for asking questions. Visit these people at their tables. They're great. You've seen how funny they are, so you're going to have a good time if you have a conversation.
The 2 people who asked me the nail biter question was you and you. I have ghosted traits for you.
Image Comics makes people happy.
Can I ask a quick question? Like, no.